Hello, 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 everybody. This is Linda G. Robert, your Back in the Groove Again coach, helping you live your best life now. Today, I'm going to be talking about my use of drugs or alcohol and how it changed my behavior. It was supposed to be a live, but I just wasn't feeling up to doing the live. Lives sometimes they're challenging to do because I don't always plan what I want to say. In fact, I never plan what I want to say. And so there might be periods of, silence. At least with videos, I can pause the video and think about my thoughts and how I want to say things. So this is a video, it's a recording. I'm going to start a little bit with, how I started using alcohol and drugs. The reason I'm sharing this is just so that you know, it isn't for me to reveal to the world that I use drugs and alcohol. It is to inspire you, whoever's listening to me now. If you're a woman and you're struggling and you're not really enjoying your life, know that there's hope, there's help, and there's a way out, right? There's a way out. And if you're a man and you know that your drinking or drugging has caused some challenges in your relationships, either at work or at home, know that there is hope. There is, people out there. There are people out there that are willing to help and willing to listen. So I'm hoping that it inspires you to either make changes if you want that, or that you take a look at your life, because I'm talking about things that happened in my past, and maybe that's you. Maybe you have made great changes in your life. So it's a video to help you to remember that you've come a long way and you've worked really hard to become the person that you are today. So it's meant to be inspiring. So I remember when I was in grade 9, a friend of mine took a bottle of vodka and orange juice out of her ski jacket, snowmobile suit, actually. And she handed it to me, and I took a sip of it, and I noticed that it was alcohol. I never had tried alcohol before. This was in grade 9 during a Café Chantant. It was an event that, every year around wintertime, it was a celebration and a fun time. So I had my first drink then, vodka and orange juice. And for the longest time, that was my drink, vodka and orange juice. But at that time, and for the next events after that, it was just a way to have fun, to connect with the girlfriends. And I noticed that I was really silly when I drank. And I always, was silly when I drank. Later on in life, when I was in my early 20s, because I didn't really drink a lot, when I was a teenager. In college, I did, and it was party time, and I think that was pretty typical to party on Friday nights. But what might not have been typical is after I partied on Friday night, or after I went to a bar on Friday night, I would go to work because I had to work night shift at a bowling alley. That was really tough. But hey, I was in a good mood and everything was fine and everything was, done properly, kind of thing. So, when I was a teenager, not much drinking, early 20s, a little bit different then. And I remember one night, this was in March, I went to the bar with my mother. And just a little bit about that. My mother had been single for a long time. My parents divorced when I was 10. And when I was young, around 12, 13, my mom brought me to the bars. So she brought me to the Legion when I was around 12. And, it was fun because I enjoyed dancing, but I did get picked up by an older man, and he came over. So my mom, did things like that when I was younger. Fast forward to when I'm 21 and I'm at the bar with my mom. She dared me to pick up a young man that was kind of cute. And I said, okay, needed to prove something to my mom. But this young man smoked pot. And at that time, by that time, I had already smoked pot once. And so when he offered me pot, I said, sure, it was the cool thing to do. So I smoked pot with him and basically hung around with him that whole night and the entire weekend after that. But pot wasn't an issue at that time. It was after he passed, because he died 9 months after we were together. We were married for 2 months in October and he died in December. It was after that, after he died, and I share a lot more on a podcast that I'm going to be putting out on my podcast. So I'm not getting into a lot of details here, but he died. And after that, the behaviors were changed. Not so much drinking, but the adulterous behaviors kicked in. The promiscuity behaviors kicked in after that. While I was married with my second husband, I didn't have any feelings of attraction. I wasn't attracted to him. He was a good friend. And we got married, but I wasn't in love with him, unfortunately. And I did go to a lot of parties alone or with a girlfriend. And at that time, alcohol became an important part of my life. Now, there was alcohol involved, but the alcohol allowed me to step out of my comfort zone and allowed me to be more fun, because I do tend to be shy when I go out in groups. It's in my introverted side. So the alcohol did allow me to, step out and have fun and be lively. And that, of course, was attractive to some men. So, of course, the alcohol at that time and for years after always led to promiscuity. So at some point in my 30s, I didn't notice the pattern. It was just, what I did when I would go out on weekends. By then I had a couple of kids and I was already in university. So, I had done quite a lot. And of course I was working full-time or part-time at a psych unit as well. But I noticed that I didn't feel very good about myself after drinking. I mean, never mind the hangovers, but there was a feeling of depression, of feeling shame and feeling guilty that was starting to come around. After drinking. I'll give you another example here. By then, I had already started doing seminars at my place. I was doing a stress management seminar one day. And the night before, I went out and had a great time, brought a man home. Now, the next morning when I was supposed to do the seminar, I didn't do it. I put a little note on my door saying, sorry, something came up. And I canceled that seminar. Now, I had wanted to do seminars for a long time. In fact, when I went to university, I specialized in stress management. But that morning, I had a bit of a hangover, yes, but it was mostly because I slept in and I wasn't organized and I wasn't prepared. All of these excuses to not have that seminar, so I didn't do it. And there were a couple of occasions like that made me feel like a loser, really. I didn't feel very good about myself. And I remember I was at the Tim Hortons with a friend of mine who had already stopped drinking by then. And she, and I were just talking, and she invited me to just take a look at it, to just look at my behaviors and to look at my drinking and just to, be open about taking a step back and noticing the impact that it was having on my life. And I decided to take her invitation, and I booked myself for, I think it was a 1 week or 2 week, I can't remember, program in Elliott Lake. Now, that was a good experience, although it was, a lot of AA meetings, and, I was okay with that at that time, no problem with that. It did help me to take a look at some of the reasons why I was drinking, and it did allow me to, really take a look at myself of why I wasn't having, healthy relationships and so on. But it was just the initial phase. It was the initial phase. And at that point too, I remember not drinking or using any substances for almost a year at that time too. Now, that didn't stop me from after that period of continuing to drink, but at that time I shifted. I didn't drink so much. I did like wine, but I didn't drink that much. I was never a really big drinker. But it shifted to smoking pot. I much rather, smoke pot at that time than drink. And how did that start? Well, it started with, in my 30s, I'm already separated and divorced. I had invited some girlfriends over, and we booked a cottage. It was potluck, and really it was just fun. Just fun. I was the partier. I would smoke with my friends, smoke pot with my friends, and just have a really fun time. The first time I smoked pot, I was 20, and I was with a girlfriend who was a couple of years younger than me. She was a college friend, and I remember before I got to her place, I hitchhiked. Another friend and I were going to visit her for the weekend, and we got off the wrong stop, like really wrong stop. We were supposed to stop in Espanola, but we ended up by missing that stop. We were going to Little Current, and so we got off in, might have been Thessalon, I can't remember. And my friend and I were saying, what are we going to do? We're in the middle of nowhere, and my plan was to visit my friend who was in Little Current. And my other friend said, no, I'm not going. So I think she called her parent, but I hitchhiked all the way. So there was a sense of freedom, of independence. I was 20. I was really, really young at that time. So when I did finally get to my friend's place, we went out, smoked pot and a few other little things too. And it was just a fun time, but it was still recreational at that time. My smoking pot really started becoming a problem when my mom lived with me. My mom had dementia. And for a couple of months initially, and then she did live with me for quite a few years after that. For those couple of months, though, no pot smoking. I was married at the time, and I took care of her for 2 months. But then also going a lot of other challenges with the ex too. There was a drinking incident where something happened. My ex lied to me about something, and I found my ring in a frozen glass, and I had asked him about it. He said no, he didn't know, and I was so pissed, so upset. And I decided to call a girlfriend and ask her to get out because I was so upset. I asked her to go out with me, and so I went out. And she couldn't meet me after all, so I called a guy that I had a relationship with. We met that night, and of course I was promiscuous. So a lot of times, every time there was alcohol involved, there was always, at that time, promiscuity. I would say, most of the time there was promiscuity at that time. So it's hard to just talk about my alcohol use without talking about, about promiscuity, because at that time it seemed to go hand in hand. So back to my smoking pot, because my mom eventually did live with me for several years. And at that time, there was also, this was in '01, there was also another man who lived with me, with his kids, and he was a pot smoker. So I would never buy pot myself, but, I smoked my friend's pot with them. I did that with another girlfriend as well. I never did go buy pot. I would always use their pot. So I smoked pot a lot at that time, every day for quite a few months, because I was not being able to accept my reality. Basically, that's what it was. My mom was living with me. She was so sick. She had dementia. Sometimes she would be so angry and she would swear and she would run away and I'd have to find her. So it was very, very difficult. And also the guy that I was living with, or that was living with me, he would smoke once in a while, but I think that at that time I was kind of smoking more than him, because he didn't really want to smoke that much. But by then I was using it really to avoid my reality, and I was really unhappy. And being with him too, I was unhappy also being with him. My little voices were telling me to get away, but I wasn't really paying attention to my intuition at that time. I was kind of blocking out a lot of different things at that time. So the pot smoking was done to kind of avoid the feelings of my reality, at that particular time. And I'm going to fast forward to '07, '08, when I moved to Ottawa. I moved to Ottawa because I was so hurt. I had a relationship that didn't work out. And yes, I still smoked at the time, but this relationship, it hurt me, desperately hurt me. So initially in Ottawa, I was smoking, just to have a good time, just to have fun. But then there was a point where I moved out of that apartment that I was sharing with a friend, and I moved out to live in a room in a house. And I remember one night I went out to celebrate my 50th birthday, and coming back from that celebration, I bumped into the neighbor. Now the neighbor was out there shoveling snow, because my birthday's in January. And he seemed like a really nice guy. And so we agreed to go out. We agreed to go out to the bar. We went to a blues bar, and he asked me if I wanted to smoke with him, and I did. And so with him, for the next year and a bit, we smoked together. We smoked a lot together. And that affected my work. At that time, I was also trying to offer services, consulting services, and I offered, webinars, and not webinars at that time, seminars, going out of town to offer seminars. And I know that it was kind of playing tricks on my head, because, every time I would not smoke, no, I didn't feel hungover, because I didn't feel that way. But there was something in me that was telling me that this wasn't really me. It wasn't really me to smoke like that. So I did continue smoking regularly. And then I wouldn't drink. I wouldn't smoke during the weekend. I would smoke on weekends. It would start fairly early, too, 8 o'clock in the morning. There was a point in '09. So this was about a year and a half after I had met him. And I remember sitting on the couch, and he's beside me, sleeping. We had smoked, and he's beside me sleeping, and I thought, I don't want this. I don't want this kind of life. I remembered smoking and getting so stoned that I couldn't even think, couldn't even move during the years, of my smoking pot. I've experienced that, doing hot knives and feeling like, oh my God, completely frozen. Those memories kind of came to me, and I thought, screw this. And this was in October 5th, I think. October 5th, 2009. And that was the last time that I smoked pot. Now, at that time, too, I went to some meetings. I had gone to some meetings, over the years when I was trying to stop. I went to some AA meetings, and I went to some NA meetings. I knew that was there. I knew it was there for me, so I started to go to those meetings again. Now, one thing that I didn't share is in 2001, when I was smoking pot a lot, my mom was living with me. At that time, I had a breakdown. I couldn't go back to work. I remember crying crazily, and knowing that I just couldn't continue. I had a burnout. I was working in the mental health system at the time, and I didn't go to work. I took a sick leave, and at that time, I didn't smoke. I stopped smoking for a while, for a few days, and I decided to look into a program. Now, I did a bit of research, and I discovered the Renaissance program for women. It was a program in Toronto. And so I had gone to see my doctor, and I wanted to have a sick leave, but I didn't tell him why and what was really happening. He didn't really want to give me a sick leave at all, So when I came home after that appointment is when I started doing that research, and I found out that I could go away for a couple of weeks. And then I went back to see my doctor, and I told him that I smoked pot. It was so hard to tell him that. It was hard for me to tell him that I smoked pot. And he told me that he's going to give me a sick leave. But when I come back from that program, because I told him about the program, I'd have to see a psychiatrist, because he said that what I was having to deal with was more of a mental issue, not a physical issue. And man, oh man, that was so hard for me to hear. I worked at the mental health center then, the psychiatric hospital then, and I knew that when I would have to see a psychiatrist, I probably would have to go to my work environment and see some psychiatrist that maybe I did work with. So it was extremely challenging for me. So I went to that program for a couple of weeks, and went to a lot of AA meetings. And at that time, I didn't really see myself like everyone else, and the point is that sometimes we do tend to compare ourselves. And I learned over the years that I did have a problem with smoking pot. Whether I call it an addiction or a habit is irrelevant at this point. But I did have a problem with it, that's for sure. And the people who were there had problems with other things too. Whether they chose to call it an addiction was, entirely up to them. And so going away for those 2 weeks not only allowed me to take some time off, because I really needed to take some time off, it also really allowed me to think about things, reflect on things, talk to people about, how I was feeling, what I was going through. It allowed me to make some really good decisions. When I came back from that 2-week program, I decided to start the proceedings for my mom. And so eventually in 2004, I did place her in a long-term care facility. So, I know I'm kind of going back and forth here, but it's just to show you that when I did make the decision to quit smoking in October 2009, it wasn't the first time, right? I had stopped smoking and then I started again. And then I had kind of negotiated whether you're going to smoke just on weekends. So there was a period of trial and error. I tried different things. But when I made that decision in October, when I chose that I didn't want that lifestyle. No, I was already a consultant, and I think by then I had already taught a college course. So it was a professional, but I still had problems. I still had problems at the time. When I made the decision to quit, by then I had already started working full-time as a employment consultant, right? Because I had started that job in July 2009. I had done other things before then too. But in October, when I quit, and a little while after that, I think it might have been the July after that, July 10, I think it was then, I talked to my manager, and I told her that I needed to take a couple of weeks off. Now, why was that happening? It was happening because I did stop smoking pot, and I hardly drank anymore, but I wasn't feeling confident. I was feeling intimidated by some of my coworkers. So there were still parts of me that wasn't the best that I could be, right? So even though I quit smoking pot, that allowed me to get a clear head and to start feeling better about myself. But I still needed to do some work. So when I talked to my manager, I didn't get into the specifics. I did tell her I needed to have a couple of weeks off, and explained to her that there were some certain things I needed to work on. And so she granted those 2 weeks off, and I did go away again to that program. It was a different program this time. But it was in Elliott Lake. The first program I went to for a week or two, I couldn't remember, was in Elliott Lake. And then the second program I went to was in Toronto. And then this last program was in Elliott Lake again. That was considered a family program. I think it was the family program. And we worked on different things. And it was, I don't remember a lot of the program, but the point is that when I came back from that program, I felt different. I felt more confident. I really did. And I felt more equal to my coworkers and equal to my boss. I didn't feel, because what my boss was one of the ladies that I felt intimidated. I didn't feel intimidated after some time. Now, I continued to work on myself, of course. I had written some letters. I forgave myself. I forgave others. And also by then, I had already talked to my ex about all of the, adultery that I committed. So I had done a lot of work, challenging work, but I had done it. So gradually over the years, so we're talking about 2009 and we're now in 2022, over the years, I started feeling really good. I started feeling confident, and to the point where I did start doing work that I enjoyed. Now, I still worked at the center. I did that for 9.5 years, but I started offering seminars and full-day workshops. I wanted to do that for years, And there was no more self-sabotaging. No more, because by then, no more smoking pot, but I drank occasionally, really occasionally. I could even say I was a non-drinker for some times, and then I would go out with friends and have a social drink, but no more picking up men when I drank alcohol. And so I didn't have to feel shame. I didn't, because I made some really good healthy changes that allowed me to live life on life's terms and to take it one day at a time. I remembered hearing all of these logos when I was in the AA program. One day at a time, keep it simple, but I didn't get it. I didn't get it at the time. But I actually started understanding it more, as the years went on, and I still do to this day. Take it a day at a time and do more meditation now, because I started doing that a few years ago. And I journal when I need to, but now it's more of a video. I do more videotaping now, more recording now than journaling. I'll do that once in a while. I've been able to accomplish things that I never thought I would accomplish. I've been able to travel on my own and not get into trouble, if you know what I mean. Because of course, back in '01, I had gone to Cuba, and drinking, and of course partying, and of course, no, not adultery, but promiscuity. And there was a lifeguard and the pool guy and whatever, not together, but still lots of stuff had happened in my life with the drinking. So suffice to say that, even coaches aren't perfect people, right? Coaches like me, we all have our stories, and we may not share our stories as openly as I'm sharing mine with you now. But I chose to share this part of the story so that I've got some experience. I got life experience. And when I say that, I want you to get your groove on, I want you to live your best life now, it's because I know it's possible. It's possible. Now, you may not have a drinking issue. You may not be, addicted to drugs or pot or whatever it is. It might be something else. Who knows? I don't specialize in addictions necessarily, but I do definitely understand it. And I definitely would help you to take a look at that, or invite you to consider looking at it from maybe a different perspective. That's what coaches do, right? That's what we do. We want you to live your best life now. We want you to set goals and to feel that you can accomplish these goals and actually accomplish them. So I know this was a long video, and I think doing it in a live would have been a little bit different. Now, I shared a lot of information on this podcast. I kind of broke down my life in decades. I started with, when I was a young child, and in my teens and 20s, and I didn't do that here. I'm sorry if it felt a little bit disorganized, but I don't plan what I say. I don't have a script in front of me. So I'm going to leave you with that. And with this note here, do all things with kindness. All things with kindness. Because, when I was going through the videos and the lives that I've done recently, and having to, or choosing to go back in time and think about the things that I've done, things that I have forgiven myself, I had to remind myself that I'm not that person anymore. It was a person that I was back then, and I don't even recognize that person anymore, really. I know that it's part of me, of course, because I remember, but I don't live there anymore. I don't live in those stories. I shared my stories with you to inspire you, but I don't live in those stories. And I, as well as you, need to do all things with kindness. So if you're going to be writing a journal, be kind to yourself. If you're going to be sharing your story, be kind. Choose people who will be kind to you, who will listen without judging. That's so important. And so it's really important, if you plan on talking with somebody about what might be bothering you or disturbing you, choose the right person. Counselors, therapists, in some cases, if you think you need that, will be kinder and more accepting. Coaches, of course, will as well, but friends too, right? So choose the right friends to talk to. You certainly don't want to go in there thinking that you're being judged and that you're a bad person, that you're wrong, because you're not. You're not. I am not a bad person. In fact, I'm a really, really good person. I truly believe that now. I didn't always believe it. That's why I had to do some work. That's why I had to write some love letters to me. And I did. I wrote a couple of love letters to myself. And I did mail a few of them too. And it was really nice to read that. So there's another tip for you. So this is Linda G. Robert, your Back in the Groove Again coach, helping you live your best life right now so you can love what you do. Please do go to my website, lindagrobert.com, and send me an email if you think you want to work with me, backinthegroove again @gmail.com. Take care now. Have a great day.